Bismillah Rahman Rahim. Assalamu alaikum. I hope all of you are fine and keeping safe during these tough times. So, what we are going to do is we are going to start with lecture one that I posted on Google Classroom. I hope everyone could download the files from there. And today we are going to talk about Introduction to Occupational Health and Safety. So, what I'm going to do is I, I'm sharing my screen with you guys. So I'll take notes on the PowerPoints that I have shared, and then later on during the day, I'll share those PowerPoints into the Google Classroom. So I'll replace the already present files with the new ones, the annotated ones. Has everyone got access to the files that I posted? You can respond in the chat if with a yes or a no. Can you guys hear me? Has everyone got access to the files that I posted? Okay, that's good. So I hope we are good to start then. So let's start our class on Introduction to Occupational Health and Safety. You probably have seen the files that I posted. So occupational health and safety, what do you mean by that? Today we are going to define the concept of occupational safety and health. Then we'll explain or briefly discuss the history of occupational safety and health, that why and when it started, explain the importance of safety in the workplace, and describe the major safety terminologies and classify types of accidents. So to begin, first of all, what do we mean by occupational safety and health is a basic human right? What is a basic human right? If you are working somewhere, you want to make sure that you are safe, your health is taken care of. And this is the responsibility of your employer, that they give you a safe and healthy environment to work in. So sometimes what happens is that we overlook certain things. And the main reason that this course is being taught to engineering students is that you realize what are your rights as an employee in any situation, or what are your responsibilities as a manager or an employer if you have other people working for you. So like you can see this picture which is showing a funny situation, that the manager is holding the hand of a person and saying there is still some work left in this one, get him another pot of coffee. So you don't want to be in a situation like that. You don't want to overwork yourself, because what comes first is your health and your safety. And that's why we say that health, occupational safety and health is a basic human right. So a basic human right for safety at workplace. Now, the way that we are going to take this forward is I'm going to show you certain images, but if, like the disclaimer says, if you have a weak heart, please do not look at the screen for the next few slides. This is a person whose leg you can see is severely damaged in a workplace. Another guy showing his eye, which is damaged while working, even more severe. Or you can see here what has happened to the car, and imagine what would have happened to the people that were inside there. But some accidents are just our fault or own fault. We are not careful enough, or we are not well trained, or we are not ready for the job. To cut it short, we are not ready for the job. If you're not ready for the job and you take it up, definitely you will end up having accidents, unless you're lucky and you get by without any accidents. So therefore, we need to introduce some of the concepts of occupational safety and health. how do you prevent accidents? And preventing accidents is actually a part of good management and as well as good workmanship. So that means whether you are a employee in an organization or you are in higher management in an organization, in both cases, it is an essential part of your duties to prevent accidents. Why you want to prevent accidents? We will learn in a little while that what are the costs associated with accidents. So managements and workers must cooperate with each other, and the cooperation between the team members, whether that's management and workers or workers themselves or managerial people themselves, it is cooperation between the group of lot or people that is going to make sure that everything that happens in that organization is in a safe and healthy environment. Now, sometimes we feel that if there is an accident in the workshop, it must be just the fault of the workers or maybe the line manager who's or the supervisor who is present in the workshop. But that's not always the case. Like we discussed while we were in the class before COVID-19, that management has to play role to make sure that the environment is safe for people. Now, there needs to be a defined and a very well-known safety and health policy. So we want to make sure that how can you make an environment safe? So the first thing we said that it's both the responsibility of the management and the workmanship. Secondly, management and workers cooperate with each other, and that way they can make the environment safe. Next, top management needs to take the lead. They need to make sure that the environment is safe for working. Then, on top of all of that, if there is not a well defined and well known safety and health policy that is known to each and every person in the organization, then you cannot ensure a safe and healthy environment for your employees. Now, there should be dedicated resources in the organization, and there should be dedicated people in the organization who achieve the policy that is devised on health and safety matters. And above all, best available knowledge and methods. What do you mean by best available knowledge and methods? You need to make sure that whatever the work environment is, you have a complete knowledge of what are the hazards associated with it and what are the preventive measures or what are the preventive methods that are available that you can make the environment safe for your workers. Some brief history. Again, I'm not going to go into details of the history. That's something that you can read by yourself. Until the 1970s, there were no national laws for safety and health hazards. So that tells us that the laws started more recently, like just in the 1970s or later than that. There were several tragedies that had occurred before that. The 1911 Triangle Shirtwaist Company fire in New York City killed 146 of 500 employees. Now, if you look at that, 146 of 500 employees, that's a big number, right? So that's almost more than a quarter of employees in the company. Then production for World War I caused a crisis in workplace safety and health conditions. By the 1960s, 14,000 workers died every year, and more than 2.2 million workers were not able to work from injuries and illnesses. So if you look at these numbers, these tell us that occupational health and safety is an important topic. And as an engineer, it's important for you to know how to keep your environment safe for yourself and as well as your colleagues or your employees. Now, again, this slide will skip it because this is something relevant to Malaysia, and we are not in Malaysia. So I'm going to talk about Pakistan in another document that I have uploaded there. Now, more importantly, what is the importance of safety in the workplace? Employees can remain motivated if they feel safe and happy. What do you mean by that? As a human being, the first and foremost thing is that you want to be safe, and if you are safe, then you will feel happy, right? That and motivated to work in that environment. Formation and implementation of safety programs that are meant to teach the employees to handle risk. Okay. Now, if you dedicate the task of keeping the environment safe to just a few in the higher management, or maybe a few line managers, or maybe even a few workers, then you can no way attain a safe and healthy environment. The only way you can attain a safe and healthy environment is if you can teach all your employees how to handle risks, because each and every person might be working on a different aspect in the organization, and the risks associated with their job might be different. The nature of the risk might be different, the severity of the risk might be different, and therefore it is important that each and every employee is properly trained to handle the risks associated with either their jobs or even the risks associated with the jobs of their colleagues that are surrounding them. Now, violence at workplace can not be tolerated in any event or in any manner. So therefore, let's start, since we are interested in understanding the concept of occupational health and safety, let's start with understanding some of the major safety terminologies. Accident. We probably are all aware of the word because that's very common and commonly used in Pashto or Urdu as well. But the word comes from English, and it means that it's an event that's unexpected, unplanned, unexpected. And it's not the unplanned or unexpected part that worries us. It's the result in loss, injury, or damage that worries us mostly. That if there is an unplanned or unexpected event which can result in loss, injury, or damage, we call that an accident. So, okay, now nobody wants loss, injury, or damages. So, how do we tackle that? The next important terminology is code of practice. Is there some sort of a practical guidance that is enforced in the organization and everybody complies by those rules or those guidelines to make sure that the environment is safe? And if somebody does not comply with those rules, then they know that there will be legal consequences of the not following the guidelines. So in any environment, there needs to be a clear code of practice, a body of rules for practical guidance. Not just a body of rules for practical guidance, but that body of rules should be implemented. If not by just teaching your employees, then you have to force them. And if you cannot force them, then the only way out is that you have to get rid of those employees, or there needs to be some sort of a legal proceeding against them. Now, ergonomics. What do you mean by ergonomics? The study of relationship between workers and their occupation, equipment, environment, and particularly the application of anatomical, physiological, and psychological knowledge to the problems arising therefrom. So, if you are sitting in a chair for too long, that's not good for you. So you need a chair that's comfortable enough, that gives you proper lumbar for back support, that gives you proper armrest. If you're sitting in front of a computer, you don't want to be putting your laptop on your laps all day long. You want to be putting it on a desktop, and you want to make sure that your hands are placed correctly. That's ergonomics. The same way, it's the relationship between a worker and the machine. If the worker is getting tired by working on the machine, say the machine is such that there is a piece of equipment that he has to operate, but it is up here and he's standing here and he has to stand on his toes to push the button, and that button needs to be pushed like 100 or 200 times a day, or even 10, 20 times a day. So that's not ergonomically safe, or the design is not ergonomic. So therefore, we need to make sure that the ergonomics of the work environment are properly designed by taking into consideration the anatomical, the physiological, and psychological effects of the work environment, and thinking about the problems that could arise because of poor ergonomics. Is everybody following? Or am I just talking and all of you are sleeping? Can somebody respond, please?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
All right. Okay. So moving forward, fire precautions. Now,
Hmm.
okay, can you please turn off your mics? Switch off your mics, please. Okay. What do you mean by fire precautions? Fire precautions means that these are the measures that you take to protect the building in the event of fire. So there is already a fire. How do you protect the employees? How do you protect the building? But protecting the equipment and the building or anything else is secondary. The first and foremost thing is the occupants in the building. So if there is a good organization, so it would have clearly defined fire exits, and probably fire exits everywhere in the building. And those fire exits would be covered with proper fire proof doors, so that even if there is fire in one room, it cannot go into the other room. So what kind of fire precautions are in place in your work environment? So the measures taken and the fire protection features provided in a building. Now, this is something that you as an engineer could think about. Okay, I'm designing a building. Do I need to think about fire precautions? Do I need to think about designing sprinklers into the building? Do I need to put fireproof doors? What are the measures that I should take, or what is the equipment that I should provide, that in case of an outbreak of fire, there can be a proper measure that can be taken and people can be protected from the fire. Again, now when we say fire precautions, so it does not mean that each and everyone is allowed to go there and take out the fire extinguisher and start putting out fires. There are specified people in every organization. Those are people who are properly trained. They know what to do in the event of the fire. They know what kind of fire it is. They know what kind of fire extinguishers to use on the fire, and they know when to run, because you have to make sure that you yourself are safe as well. Even though if you're given the duty that you have to prevent fires, when if there is a fire outbreak, you have to take the fire extinguisher and put it out. But if you see that the situation is such, which will be clearly defined to you during your trainings, that if the fire is of such and such level, or if the smoke has risen to such and such level, then you have to evacuate. Forget about the fire extinguisher, forget about putting out the fire, get yourself out of there. Next, fire prevention. What do you mean by fire prevention? The concept of preventing outbreaks. So how do you make sure that the fire never outbreaks? There is no fire at all. So you are reducing the risk of fire outbreak, reducing the risk of fire spreading, and avoiding any danger to people and property from fire. Like I said already, you can install fireproof doors, you can install sprinklers. So in any organization, there will always be clearly defined fire precautions, fire prevention strategies. And every good organization will have multiple strategies in place. There will be fire extinguishers everywhere, clearly labeled which type of fire can it put out or what kind of fire extinguisher it is. And if you remember in our first class, we discussed the 100 safety topics that I'm going to go into next and show you the different types of fires that can be there and what kind of fire extinguishers you need to use. Next comes the concept of first aid. What do you mean by first aid? Say there is an incident or there is an occurrence or accident in the organization, or there is a case of sudden illness. So the organization should have the facility of first aid. Now, the level of first aid would depend on the organization. At least every organization should have some sort of first aid kit to treat like minor bruises or burns, or in certain cases, like say for example, if you are working in an organization where you're dealing with corrosive chemicals, say acids or alkalis, that could, if they touch your skin, that could burn your skin in a manner of minutes or even in certain cases quicker than that. So there you need some sort of first aid kit which has neutralizing agents. So as soon as the acid or alkali comes into contact with your hands or with your skin, so you can take the neutralizing agent from the first aid kit and apply it there and then. Now, usually in good organization, there will be rules, there will be protocols. The protocols will clearly state that if you have utilized any of the first aid provisions that are provided to you, please report it to Mr. So and so or Miss So and so, whoever is the health and safety in charge or health and safety officer in the department. You will have to report it to them, or probably there will be some sort of a documentary track record that you would have to fill out, and you would have to file that documentary proof that okay, there was such and such accident or incident that occurred in lab 1 or lab 2 or XYZ or room XYZ. Such and such people were present, and this is why the incident happened. You would give the details of did you follow all the safety protocols, did you follow the proper operating conditions that you were supposed to follow. So now again, all this report filing and this is not for blaming someone. This is to make sure that whatever happened today, it does not happen ever again. And the only way that you can prevent accidents from happening is by properly documenting it without any bias. So if you start filing a report and you are thinking that, okay, if I file this report is going to go to my higher management, and my higher management is going to take this as a negative aspect of my personality working here in their organization because I had an accident. No, everybody can have an accident. Anybody can have an accident. That does not mean that while you're reporting the accident, you should be biased or you should be untruthful. Because the reason for filing reports is, so filing reports means what? Filing reports mean preventing such accidents from happening or occurring ever again. So the question arises, how do you make sure that what kind of report should be filed? So the report that you're filing, and the discussion started from first aid kit, that you utilize some provision from the first aid kit. So now you need to file the report, right? So filing the report needs to make sure that the report should be unbiased. Whether it's you that you were involved in the incident, or you are just there to investigate the incidents, in both cases the report should be unbiased and it should be factual. It should be factual, and it should not be conclusive in a way that you are trying to blame someone for the accident, because it can be anybody's fault, or it can be nobody's fault, or it can be everybody's fault. So an accident happening in any environment, it can be nobody's fault, meaning the accident happened because of whatever reason that was not taken into consideration, so you cannot blame anyone for them. Or it can be fault of the immediate person who was sitting there and he did not follow the protocols or the proper guidelines for the operating procedures for the equipment or for the process. Or it could be everybody's fault because the management, they provided the operating procedure and they did not take into consideration the risks or hazards that were associated with the job. The person who is on the job, they just followed the instructions blindly without even thinking, okay, what am I doing? Am I just reading things and just doing things, or am I even thinking, for an instance, what does it mean? Do I really understand my job, or what am I doing there? So like I said, that accidents report filing should be unbiased and it should be factual, and it should not be for the reason or for the sake that you want to blame someone. Now, what do you mean by hazard? Hazard means an exposed danger. What do you mean by an exposed danger? Something that you can sense, you can feel, you can see. It is a condition or practice with potential for loss. It is a condition in the environment, or it is a particular practice in your work environment that could at some point cause harm to someone or to the property. So a situation that may give rise to personal injury or asset damage, or both. So such a danger or a condition is called hazard. Now, usually in any work environment, there will always be some sort of manual handling. What do you mean by manual handling? You are transporting material from one place to another. So you are lifting it from the tabletop onto a lifter, or you are lifting it from a cart onto a tabletop, or you're just moving it from one place to another. So there will always be some sort of manual handling involved in your work environment, and you need to make sure that you are properly trained for manual handling of loads. So there are proper trainings for manual handling of loads. What do those trainings tell you? Those trainings tell you what is the limit of load that you should pick up with your bare hands, and what should be the correct posture or position in which you should be lifting loads. So therefore, even for something as I wouldn't say it's menial or small, but it's something as common, because we do manual handling every day in our homes, schools, everywhere, right? So manual handling is something like we think, oh, okay, I know this. But when it comes to manual handling in a work environment, no, you don't know it. If you're going to be manually handling loads, you need proper training. You need to make sure that you know your limits, your bodily limits. You cannot just go and start lifting tens and 20 of kgs every day and multiple times a day. And if you don't lift that load in a correct posture, you could end up with a bad back, or maybe even bad knees, or who knows what kind of problem you might end up with. Maybe in the near future or right now, you might not see any problems, but down the line, when you get older, these things will start showing up. So you need to make sure that you are properly trained for each and everything that is your job in your work environment. Means of escape. What do you mean by means of escape? Structural means whereby a safe route is provided for persons to travel unaided from any point in a building to a place of safety. Like I said, fire exit routes. So if in any good building, there will always be properly defined fire exit routes. Those fire exit routes are designed in such a way that even in the event of a fire, those passages will stay safe and you can just walk through to safety without getting in the way of harm. Sometimes you would see that when there is a fire in a building, so all the elevators will be shut down, and the staircase, which is usually prevented by fireproof doors, so that could be the safest place in the building to prevent yourself from the fire. So means of escape means that it's a structural means by whereby you can get to safety without getting harm. Now, when we talk about accidents, so the level of accidents can be different. Whether that level of accident means that there is some sort of an injury or some sort of harm happening, or it's just a near miss. What do you mean by a near miss? A near miss means that an incident happened, but there wasn't any visible effect of that incident. There wasn't any visible effect of that incident, or that incident did not damage or cause loss to either person or property. So, but that incident had the potential to damage. It did not damage. The people who were there, they were lucky enough that did not get hurt, but the incident had the potential to hurt someone, or to hurt or to damage something. So an incident where nobody gets harmed or nothing gets damaged, but it has the potential to do so, we call it a near miss in the occupational health and safety terminology. Again, we already talked about this, that there should be a clearly defined policy in any organization, or there that makes sure that the people who are working there, they are safe and healthy. Next, let's define the concept of, or understand the concept of a qualified worker. What do you mean by qualified worker? Can somebody tell me what's a qualified worker? Like, what would, if I said someone is a qualified worker, what would that mean?
Knows proper education, sir.
Sorry?
That the person knows education with their work.
So the person is aware of what he's doing or what he's going to do. He knows his job, right? So it's a qualified worker is a person who is accepted as having the necessary physical attributes, who possesses the required intelligence, training, and education, and has acquired the necessary skill, knowledge to carry out the work in hand to satisfactory standards of safety, quantity, and quality. So a very comprehensive definition. So it involves physical attributes, involves training and education, involves the IQ level or the intelligence level. So, and then the person should be capable of delivering the jobs to satisfactory standards of safety, quantity, and quality. So if somebody is needed to be working from 8 to 4 or 8 to 2, they should have the stamina to do that. You don't want them to be like, oh, they come in at 8 and then at 12 they are like crying, sitting at their desk. Oh, I cannot work anymore. I'm too tired. Or you do not want to put someone to work in an environment where it's dangerous or there are risks associated with the environment and the person is not properly trained. So you can see that all these things, they go hand in hand. If you don't have a clear-cut policy, again, you'll have problems. You have health and safety issues. If you don't have qualified workers, you have health and safety issues. If you don't have properly defined trainings for your employees according to their jobs, then you have problem. If you don't provide proper means of escape in the event of an incident, you have problems. You have health and safety issues. So health and safety issues are most important because they are linked to the life and the health of people. Yes, they are linked to damages that can potentially be caused to property or equipment, but that is secondary. When it comes to human life comes first. Human safety comes first. And that is one of the motto in design. When you talk about mechanical design, so you always say safety first, meaning that whatever you design, you want to make sure that yes, your design is doing the particular job, but it is safe while doing that particular job. And therefore, we introduce the concept of factor of safety. So depending on what kind of design you are presenting, the factor of safety will vary. If the design is too critical and it involves a direct impact on human beings, then you would want to choose a higher factor of safety. If you're designing something that will be located in a remote area and it doesn't have higher costs associated with it, there is no human contact or very limited human contact, then yes, you can live with a lower factor of safety. So like I said, that safety comes first, and therefore it is important for everyone to understand the occupational health and safety. Let's introduce further terminologies. Reasonably practicable. What do you mean by reasonably practicable? So it's a computation made in which the quantum of risk is placed on one scale and the disadvantages involved in the measure necessary of the averting the risk is placed upon the other. A balance between risk and cost, inconvenience, effect on production. So basically, if there is a job that is reasonably practicable, what do you mean by reasonably practicable? That there is risk associated with the job, but the costs that are associated with mitigating that risk are so high, and the risk is not of such a severe level that you can say that this is a reasonably practicable job, that it's okay, there is a risk, but that risk is not so severe, and the costs associated with mitigating that risk are so high that we cannot spend that amount of money or time or resources to mitigate that risk. So this is a reasonably practicable job, and you should keep working as it is. Now, how would you decide whether a job is reasonably practicable or not? How to decide? So you decide based on the level of the risk and the costs associated with that. So how do you determine the level of the risk? Level of the risk is determined by risk assessment. So as the name states, risk assessment, it's a process where hazards are identified and risks are evaluated. So what is it? you look at your work environment, you try to see what kind of hazards are there, what kind of potential is there that it could cause harm or damage or loss to someone or to something. So the first step is that you identify the hazards. So for example, you're working in an environment where you have heavy cranes hoisted on overhead cranes and they are moving heavy loads. So now there is a hazard. There are heavy loads that are being transported on overhead cranes. So now you want to make sure that all the paths for people commuting in that area are designed in such a way that nobody ever crosses the path of the crane, or nobody ever passes under the heavy loads, hoisted heavy loads. That's okay. So the first thing is you identify the hazard. But after identifying the hazard, the next thing is you evaluate the risk. What is the level of the risk? Okay, you have a certain hazard. What is the level of the risk that is associated with it? Is the hazard such that it's going to cause a minor injury that could be treated with a first aid box that's lying in the next room? Or is the hazard such that it could cause a loss of limb, or maybe a loss of any body parts, or a loss of human functionality, to be more precise, a loss of human functionality? So that would be like a mid-level risk. And then comes the severe risk, that the hazard is such that if it happens, if ever an accident happens, it would immediately result in the loss of life. So depending on the hazard and its severity level, you have to put in place corrective measures, or you have to put in place some sort of operational guidelines or procedures so that the chances of the hazard or accident ever happening is minimized. So therefore, the objective of eliminating or reducing the risk as low as reasonably practicable. What do you mean by reasonably practicable? You, if you somebody says that we have eliminated all the risks, 100% risks are eliminated, that's a dream, a chimera. That's something that will never happen. There will always be a certain degree of risk associated with any occupational. So that level of risk which is practicable, reasonably practicable. What do you mean by reasonably practicable? So that beyond that, the costs are so high, or it is almost impossible to mitigate the risk beyond that level. So then we say that, okay, the risks are now as low as reasonably practicable. Okay, so you did risk assessment, and usually, I probably mentioned this before, let me restate that it's the job of every worker that he or she should assess the hazards associated with their work environment and prepare a risk assessment. What are the hazards associated with my work environment? What is the severity of the risks associated with my work environment? And what are ways in which I can eliminate or reduce these risks to a reasonably practicable level? Now, that's not just the job of the worker who's working in that environment, but rather it's the job of the whole organization. The higher management needs to take the lead. That's something we said in the very beginning. So management and employees all work together to make the work environment safe and healthy for their employees. Now, how do you ensure that an environment is safe? Or how do you ensure the level of safety that is provided or that's available to people working in a particular organization or environment? For that reason, you need to have regular safety audits. So safety audits mean that there is some sort of monitoring of the implementation of the safety policy. You have a well-defined safety policy, but just having a well-defined safety policy on a piece of paper is not going to make the environment safe, is it? To make the environment safe, you need that the policy is properly implemented. Okay, how do you make sure that the policy is properly implemented? By having regular safety audits. Now, when I say regular safety audits, so again, the regularity of the safety audits will depend on the organization or the sector that you are working in. If again you are working in a critical sector where there are high potential for hazards and high severity of the risks associated with the hazard, for example, you are working in the oil and gas industry. Now, what if there is a leak in the pipeline? Or what if there is a broken sensor or a broken valve? Or if you're working in the atomic energy and one of the sensors on the reactors is broken and you don't know what's the temperature, or the temperature needs to be kept under a certain level, but one of the sensors is broken and the computer is showing you that, oh, okay, everything is all right. And all of a sudden, boom, and everything is gone. And it has happened. So proper safety audits, regular safety audits, and then again, the regularity depends on what? It depends on the criticality of the environment. It depends on the work sector, the organization, or the criticality of the environment, the criticality of the hazards and the severity of the hazards that are associated with the work environment. So this brings us to a very important point, and that important point is that the health and safety guidelines, yeah, generally speaking, every work environment, whether that's agriculture sector, that's oil and gas, that's working in a hospital, or that's working in a uni, or that's even studying in a university. So every work environment should be safe. So broadly speaking, every organization should have these broad things: defined policy, there should be cooperation between the employees, the management should take the lead, there should be precautionary measures, there should be preventive measures, there should be first aid kits, there should be trained people who know what they're doing, and in the event of an incident or accident, they should take the lead. But specifically speaking, the health and safety requirements of each and every field will be different, because the risks associated with each and every field are different. The hazards associated with each and every field are different, and the severity of the risks associated with each and every field are different. So coming back, safety audits are for the purpose that you monitor whether the policy is properly implemented or not. And in the safety audit, basically, you are systematically and critically examining this safety policy and its implementation. So it's not just the implementation of the safety policy that you are just there. A safety audit just means that you want to see whether the safety policy that was devised is properly implemented. It's also a critical examination, or a systematic and critical examination of the safety policy that's properly in place. Was that safety policy properly designed? Was everything taken into consideration? Maybe you have fully implemented the safety policy, but you still have chances or risk of hazards or risk of incidents, or the severity of the risk is very high. So what does that mean? That means that the safety policy that was designed from the beginning wasn't properly designed. The dynamics of the work environment were not taken into consideration. So therefore, the safety audit, it provides a quantified assessment of performance. When we say a quantified assessment of performance, what do you mean by quantified assessment of performance? It means twofold things. Is the safety policy properly implemented, and is the safety policy properly designed or appropriate for the work environment where it is implemented. Safety inspection. So again, as the name shows, you are systematically assessing safety standards for the plant, place of work, working carried out by a manager and not a safety advisor or engineer. So safety inspection is, I would say, it's a lower level check. Safety audit, that's like a critical check. Someone from a different organization will come and visit your organization for a safety audit. You'll probably need to hire professionals to come and do the safety audit for your firm. The same way as you have financial audits. Auditors come from other organizations, they check your bank statements, they check your transactions. Have you shown everything, your balances, your ledgers, is everything correct? And then they give you a report that, oh, okay, everything is clear, you have properly paid your taxes, everything is accounted for. The same way, a safety audit, so a properly appointed team from a properly devised organization, whether that's a government organization or a private sector organization, but both will be properly certified, or they will be capable, or they will be authorized. So they have the authority to do safety audits and to generate the safety audit reports for improving the health and safety environment in your organization. Safety inspection, so this is something more of like a manager in your own company. He comes down, he looks at everything. Is everything in the plant or in the work environment according to standard? And make sure that all the work that is being done is done following the proper guidelines, the proper training that is being provided. And this is something that is internal. Safety monitoring. So again, this is just periodic checks. So you have to have periodic checks on your workplace, the plants, the work environment, to make sure that the corporate safety standards and procedures are observed. What do we mean by a workplace? A workplace may be described as any place where people are at work. So you see here, this sums it up. What is a workplace? Any place where people are at work. So that any place can be a field, that can be a factory, that can be a shop floor, that can be a hospital, or that can be any place where people are working. Even if you're working in your home, right? That's a workplace. If you're, say, standing in the kitchen and you are cooking. If you're cooking, you want to make sure that you're using wooden spatulas or some sort of a spatula which is made of a material that won't conduct heat. So, or all your pots have proper insulated handles, so that when you're lifting them and off the stove or putting them on the stove, you don't burn your hands. Or if your pots don't have properly insulated handles, then you have some sort of a insulation material that you could take that and hold the pots with that. So this definition of workplace, this sums it up for us, that each and every workplace needs some sort of occupational health and safety procedure and guidelines and policy. Types of accidents. Now, accident happens mostly due by two major causes. What are two major causes? Either it's unsafe at the workplace, there is some sort of unsafe condition, or there is an unsafe act done by a person or a group of people. So whether it's an existing unsafe condition at the workplace, or it is the fault of a person or a group of people that they did some sort of an unsafe act. Say you're working in a oil and gas industry and you are on the rig and all of a sudden you start smoking. Would that be a good choice? No, that's an unsafe act, right? Same way, there can be numerous examples of that. So with that, we can see that you want to make sure that whatever environment you work in, you look around, you can identify the hazards, you can identify the severity of the risks associated with that, and you can put in place preventive or precautionary measures to minimize the loss or to minimize the risk to a reasonably practicable level. So here the picture shows, here is the first aid kit and here is the emergency phone, and here are a lot of sharp moving parts. Any questions? So thing is that you need proper training. So this is just to show that if you don't have a proper training and if you don't know how to operate a certain equipment or a certain piece of equipment or machine, please do not go close to it. First, get trained, know what are the hazards associated with your work environment, know the severity of the risks associated with your work environment, and after that, start working in that environment. If you feel that the environment is not safe, please report to your manager, point out to them that, okay, there is such and such hazard that exists in my work environment, and there is this level of risk associated with that, and I'm sorry, I cannot work in this environment. Could you please take care of that? Or could you find a way to take care of that? So that's end of our introduction to occupational health and safety. Now we'll take 5 minutes for questions. Do you have any questions?
No, sir.
Anyone has any questions?
Thank you.
Okay. Did you guys look at the documents that I've uploaded on the Google Classroom?
सर ये सेकंड क्लास कब होंगी सर ये रेफ्रिजरेशन लैब की सर
Sorry?
ये रेफ्रिजरेशन लैब का अभी सर आज क्लास है ना सर ये आप अभी लेंगे सर या बाद में लेंगे सर
Refrigeration is a lab, right? So I don't know how can we have a lab class. So we'll have to wait for that. There are no clear guidelines from the university as to what needs to be done about the labs. I think they're waiting that once the university opens up, so then you can have the lab sessions.
राइट सर ठीक है सर
All right. So now let's move forward. Okay. In lecture 1 on your Google Classroom, the second document that I have uploaded is the Pakistan Industries Health and Hazards, right? So Pakistani industries and what are the health hazards that are associated with Pakistani industries. It's important to know the industries in Pakistan because most of you will end up maybe working in somewhere in Pakistan. So you need to know what kind of hazards are associated with the industries that are present here in Pakistan. Again, I'm not going to go into details because we already talked about most of the stuff that's going to be covered in this presentation, and you can go through this presentation by yourself. So we already talked about what is the occupational safety and health. So we talked about it's the relationship or interrelationship between people, work, the tasks they do, and the environment in which the tasks are carried out. And it is a field that ensures that worker safety and health is being taken care of. It is the field that talks about the relevant laws and regulations that are enforced in the land. Again, some background, we already talked about that. So why are we interested in the occupational health and safety courses? Because it provides a safe workplace and ensures less accidents. Right? Here are just some of the types of. Could you please turn off your mics, please? Could everyone please switch off your mics? Okay, let's look at some of the types of industries in Pakistan. So again, this data is from the year 2011, so it's not very recent. But if anybody is interested, you can always look it up. So in agriculture, the workforce or the labor force employed was 17,518,204, so 17.5 million. Then in manufacturing, it's 6 million. In service, 10.5 million, which makes agriculture makes 51% of your employee population. The service industry makes 31%, and manufacturing makes 18%. So, okay, if 51% of your population is employed in agriculture, so do we need to know about the health hazards associated with agriculture? Yes, we do, right? Because 51% of our population is working in agriculture. So there should be clear guidelines, there should be proper trainings, and there should be proper policy in place to make sure that these people who are working in the agriculture industry are safe. Same way, if you're working in manufacturing, service, or any industry for that purpose, there should be clearly charted out guidelines. There should be proper mechanisms in place. Then here is a chart of the accidents sector wise. Again, this is for the year 2010-11. So in the agriculture, the number was 49.8. So that's the reported percent of incidents that happened. 16.8% in manufacturing, 14% in construction, 11.3% in wholesale, retail, and trade, and 8.1% in transport and communication. So now you can see that accidents can happen in any sector. Accidents can happen in any sector. So therefore, it is important that each and every sector has a clearly defined occupational health and safety policy and procedure. So let's look at some of the hazards that are associated with agriculture, manufacturing, or service industry. Types of occupational hazards, they can be biological, some sort of bio hazard is there, that is some sort of an agent that can risk life of the employees or that can cause injury or illness to the employees. That can be some sort of a physical occupational hazard, like an external environmental factor that directly affects the physical well-being of employees. There could be chemical occupational hazards, ergonomic occupational hazards. Again, I'm not going to go into the details of this because we already talked about this in the introduction. Agriculture has an estimated of 45% of the total workforce population, 66% female, and 25% are children. And agriculture contributes 21%, that was in 2001, 2012, 2011, 12, that it contributed 21% towards the GDP, the gross domestic product. It contributed 21%. So that means that agriculture is an important field. They are made to do work in the most abject conditions. What do you mean by most abject condition? That there is no proper health and safety policy or procedure in place. No proper safety procedures are followed, mostly illiterate, so don't have any awareness of occupational hazards, or I would say illiterate would not be the right term to use. I would say they are not knowledgeable. They don't know what are their rights and what are the hazards that they need to look out for, and what are the risks that are associated with their job. So some of the hazards that are associated with agricultural workers are biological hazards, like diseases that can be transmitted from animals when you are caring or handling animals, parasitic diseases like malaria, skin rashes, allergic diseases, asthma, by cyanosis from cotton dust. So now there are physical hazards like prolonged exposure to heat and sunlight when they are sowing, when it's sowing season, or when they are cutting crops. So in both seasons, they are spending long hours in the hot sun, summer sun, or in the cold winter nights or winter days. So there are always some sort of dust and fumes that are present in the field. There can be wounds caused by sharp instruments or wood or stones or different sorts of material that are present in the field that can cause bruises, lacerations. There are chemical hazards that are associated with agriculture, like there is use of fertilizers, pesticides, insecticides, and those chemicals coming in contact with the skin can cause problems, or if they are inhaled, then they can cause digestive problems, or they can even cause breathing problems. So again, ergonomic. So usually you would see the people who are working in the fields, they are sitting down in an awkward position, and the ergonomics of the work environment are really poor. So they can result in backache due to prolonged bending or heavy loads and wrong posture. They can have strained joints due to repetitive work and highly strenuous work. They have poorly designed tools and equipment, and it is taking a lot more effort than required for doing a very simple job. So if the tools are not properly designed, so wrong tools will multiply your effort manifold, and the output will be much lower than required. There can be noise of vehicles, grinding, milling. So all these kind of hazards are associated with agriculture. Again, manufacturing, some basic info. GDP contribution was 25.8% in 2011, and employment contribution was 20.1% in 2010-2011. The main industries in Pakistan are textile, cement, fertilizer, sugar, food processing, oil and gas, and then again the main is textile and cement. Textile manufacturing contributes, again, I'm not going to go into the detail of this, but the conditions in these industries are not good. Like, for example, you can have cotton dust in the textile industry, and that cotton dust, while handling cotton, can cause breathing problems or respiratory disorders like chronic bronchitis. So the thing that is the focus of the lecture is that whatever is your work environment, there will always be some sort of risk or hazards associated with your work environment. And you need to be aware of the hazards and the severity of the risks associated with the hazards. And again, you need to make sure that proper preventive and precautionary measures are in place, and you are properly trained for the job that you are taking up. Okay. Now, there are organizations which put policy in place for different work environments. Like Occupational Safety and Health Agency has set permissible exposure limit, and that cotton standard is 29 CFR 1910-1043. So like 200 micrograms of cotton dust per cubic meter for ear yarn manufacturing. Now, this is referring to the particular law, the section, like the lawyer's code, according to section this, according to section this. So this is like the law that is defining that, okay, 200 micrograms of cotton dust per cubic meter for ear yarn manufacturing, or say 750 micrograms per meter cube for slashing and weaving operations. So these are just different operations in the textile manufacturing industry, or 1000 micrograms per meter cube for waste recycling and garnetting. So you can see that the limits are defined based on each procedure. For waste recycling and garnetting, 1000 microgram per meter cube. For slashing and weaving operations, 750 micrograms per meter cube. And for yarn manufacturing, it's 200 micrograms of cotton. Again, how do you measure the dust? So that's something that you guys have to read by yourself. I'm not going to go and read this out because this is something that you straightforward. How can you control the dust? What are the chemical hazards that are associated with the textile industry? Activities of dyeing, printing, finishing involve the use of chemicals based on benzene, diene, optical brighteners, crease resistance agents, formaldehyde, and antimicrobial agents. Now, there are different studies which have revealed that these chemicals are linked to different diseases like nasal cancer, lung cancer, brain cancer, respiratory difficulty, and eczema. So you can see that it's a serious issue. These chemical hazards can cause something as severe as cancer, or maybe on a mild note, it can cause eczema. But again, that's problematic, and you wouldn't want to get that. So you need to make sure that if you are working in the textile industry, you are aware of what you are dealing with. Again, there are ergonomic issues, too much noise in the work environment that leads to workers' fatigue, impaired hearing, or even loss of hearing in certain cases. Again, I'm not going to go into the details. You can talk about, or you can read this by yourself. There is a concept of maximum time of exposure. So the maximum time of exposure is calculated for noise. Depending on the level of noise, there is a certain time of exposure. And beyond that time of exposure, it can cause problems. There are other ergonomical issues, like you can see lifting heavy weights, or there can be dark and poor lighting, improper furniture, workstations, and that could lead to musculoskeletal disorders like carpal tunnel syndrome, forearm tendinitis, lower back pain, neck pain, shoulder pain, and all these issues are problems, risks, hazards, and the hazards have different severity. In certain cases, the severity is such high that it can cause cancer. In other cases, the severity might be that it can cause you a back pain for a little while, and when you go home and rest, you might get better. In other cases, the severity might be such that it starts causing you back pain, and then you cannot work for the rest of your life. So, therefore, we have found that there is lack of essential safety practices. Like I already mentioned in our classes before, that unfortunately in Pakistan, the occupational health and safety is not taken very seriously by any organization. And it's unfortunate because this is important, because it means human life, it means human health. human safety. Again, this shows the minimum illumination intensities, the levels for different type of work environment. So if it's a general construction area, so for a general construction area, it should be 53.76 lux or 5-foot candles. Again, these are units of luminous intensities or illumination intensities. So cement manufacturing contributed to GDP 10 to 12%, employment 5%, potentially a fatal industry. Now this is important to focus on. It's a dangerous industry. It can kill you. So if it can kill you, it's important that you know what will kill me or what there can kill me. And like we said, that this thing will happen from risk assessment. Right? So again, the example of cement industry. So one of the potential hazards is the cement dust. High level of dust can be produced when cement is handled, when emptying or disposing of bags. Contact with cement dust can lead to skin diseases, for example, dermatitis, irritant dermatitis, allergic dermatitis. Now, there is a requirement that whoever works in a dusty environment, they have proper protective equipment or protective gear, PPE, right? Personal protective equipment. So diameter of cement particle ranges from 0.05 to 5 micrometer. So 0.05 microns to 5 microns. That's really small, something that you cannot see it with a naked eye. When we see the cement dust, it's because there are millions and millions or even billions of particles that are afloat in air all together. So it's actually you're seeing all of them together. That's why it's visible. If you want to look at one particle, so you cannot see it with your naked eye. And they are respirable in size. So when you inhale them, that can lead to chronic cough, impairment of lung function, carcinoma of lung, that's cancer, lung cancer, stomach and colon. So, or it can lead to laryngeal cancer. So again, this is just some example industries from Pakistan and the associated hazards that are present there and the associated levels of risk that are associated with those industries. So sprains and strains, slipped, tripped, or fell on the same level. So there are different types of occupational diseases as well that are relevant to the cement industry. Vibrational problems and white finger diseases, traumatic deaths, amputations, fracture, and eye losses. Now, sorry, this is more like a generic occupational diseases that could possibly happen to anyone in a work environment. And the list is long, and this is not as extensive as it should have been. So there are many more diseases or occupational hazards that are present. This is just a tip of the iceberg. This list is in no way extensive or completely defining of all the diseases or occupational problems that could basically affect the employees. Again, all these diseases are not relevant to just one sector. They are, this is like a generic or general list. So the problems can be vibration problems, white finger diseases, traumatic deaths, amputation, fracture, eye losses, cardiovascular diseases, neurotoxic illnesses, dermatological problems, psychological problems. So since so many diseases, so many problems can happen, so it's important that there are proper health and safety measures in place. So again, I would cut out the word illiterate, but I would say majority of the workforce in Pakistan is not properly trained, or to be more specific, they are not trained at all. Like not properly trained would mean that they are trained to a certain level, right? But unfortunately, in Pakistan, most of the populace who are working out there in different various industries, they are not trained at all. And specifically, they are not trained at all in occupational safety and health. So they are not trained in their job, or have limited training on their job, but they have no or literally no training on occupational health and safety. So therefore, the occupational safety and health is included in the curriculum, and that's why we are here in this class, which is industrial health and safety. And this is your final year, and the reason that you're being taught this course in the final year, because after next semester you'll be graduating, you'll be going into different industries and different workplaces, and you want to make sure that you know what you are dealing with, what kind of health hazards are you dealing with, and what is the severity of those health hazards. So here are a number of industrial accidents by nature, and here is the severity level. So total 354 accidents in 2003, 32 of them were fatal, meaning 32 people died. 103 were serious, that means that a loss of limb or a permanent loss of functionality, and 219 were minor. So again, if you look at the numbers, so since 2003 to 2009, the only thing that has happened is there has been sort of an increase, or I would say that there is no visible decrease in the number of accidents happening. And you can see that the proportion of fatal accidents has increased in certain cases, specifically in the year 2008. Now, again, these numbers are not complete in every regard. Like this is the report of Labor and Human Resource from 2000 to 2010 by Government of Pakistan, Department, Ministry of Labor and Manpower. But in Pakistan, the reporting of accidents is not as effective as it should be. Not every accident is reported. So that means that these numbers are not complete. But again, just to give you an overview of what can happen, or what are the statistics. So labor laws, the only legislation on health and safety is the Hazardous Occupation Rule 1963 under the Factories Act of 1934. Practically, the above mentioned laws are obsolete and do not conform to international practices. So this again is from 2011. So I'll dig into what are the current state of laws, and probably we'll talk about laws in later lectures. So just an introduction of Factories Act of 19 and Labor Policy 2010. So the Labor Policy 2010 objectives are clearly defined: promotion of employee social security and social insurance program. Adequate security of jobs should be available to the workers. Conditions should be created so that workers and employers are committed to enhancing labor productivity. Promotions of higher jobs be ensured at all levels based on suitability and merit. Forced labor in all its forms should be eliminated. Just and humane conditions of work be guaranteed to all workers. Just and humane conditions, meaning safe and healthy environment. So again, I'll skip this and move on to the next topic. So before I move on to the next topic, let's take questions. Anybody got any questions? Hello?
No, sir.
Okay. So, so we talked about this, and like I said, that the next topic talks about occupational health and safety laws in Pakistan, application on the oil and gas sector. So you can see that the rules and regulations or the health and safety requirements, they vary from one sector to another. Like we already looked at agricultural sector, we looked at the cement industry, we looked at the textile industry, and we saw that the hazards associated with the industry and the level of severity or the risk, the severity of the risk associated with each industry is different. So again, here we are talking from the perspective of oil and gas industry. So again, why we need to understand occupational health and safety? To eliminate any possible danger, safeguard the employee productivity, means to promote workplace processes, protect employee rights, and maintain work health. So how can the management play the role in employee safety? They should design safe and healthy system of work. They should exhibit strong management commitment to occupational health and safety. They should regularly inspect the workplace for health and safety problems, and they should establish procedures and controls for dealing with health and safety issues. Same thing which we talked about in the first presentation. Now, again, they should develop proper training programs for their employees and managers and whoever is working in the organization. They should set up health and safety committees, or there should be proper staff assigned with duties that are responsible for ensuring health and safety in the organization. They should monitor the safety policies, like we said, that there should be regular safety audits, safety inspections, safety monitoring, and they should draw up an action plan and a checklist to make sure that their organization is providing a safe and healthy environment to the employees. Now, again, the rules that are present in Pakistan. So, the Hazardous Occupations Rules 1963 under the Factories Act of 1934. Then Provincial Employees Social Security Ordinance 1965, West Pakistan Shops and Establishment Ordinance 1969, and then Boilers and Pressure Vessel Ordinance 2002. So you can see these are some of the related laws. Mines Act 1923, Consolidated Mine Rules 1952, Oil and Gas Safety in Drilling and Production 1975. So just some introduction to some of the rules and some basic definitions that what do you mean by an agent? It's a person who is representative of the owner, who is superior to manager mine. So this is with respect to the mines, and some terminologies associated with the Mines Act. So again, oil and gas. So some rules or some excerpts from the oil and gas rules and regulations. I'll expect everyone has probably read through these documents, and if not, then after the class, you do take your time and read through them. The reason I'm saying this is because there will be pop-up quizzes. You show up into the class, there will be a quiz, you'll be given 5-10 minutes. It will be most probably a multiple choice quiz or some sort of short answer quiz. And if you haven't gone through your lecture slides or you haven't been keeping track of your course, then you won't be able to perform on those quizzes. So just make sure that whatever documents I upload for your reference, you do go through them. So some precautions against fires in the oil and gas industry. No person shall make naked light or fire or weld in hazardous area except under a valid permit and suitable notices that shall be posted to this effect. So you can see that this is telling how you should be acting around an oil and gas industry. So again, a section on the personal protective equipment or PPE. Nowadays, you see everywhere, everybody's talking about PPE. You go outside, you want to wear your mask, you want to put on gloves, you want to make sure you don't come into contact with anyone, nobody coughs in your mouth. So there are rules and regulations in place, but either in Pakistan, the rules are not properly divided. Like when we said in safety audits, we talked about that the safety audit means whether the policy is properly implemented, but at the same time, whether the policy is properly devised and designed. So, unfortunately, in Pakistan, either there is no policy or clearly defined rules or properly defined rules, and if there are, then they are not properly implemented. So as an engineer, it's your duty that when you are in a work environment, you ensure that there is a proper safety policy and that policy is properly implemented in your workplace. So what are the elements in creating a safe work environment? Safety, motivation, and knowledge. So the first thing is you are motivated to make sure that the workplace is safe, and you have the knowledge, the training, that what does a safe workplace mean or safe work environment mean, or you have the knowledge about the associated hazards of your workplace and the severity of the risks that are associated with those hazards. You need safety awareness programs. So again, like we discussed before, safety does not come from just appointing a couple of people as team leads that, oh, okay, it's your job, you have to make sure that the environment is safe. No, there should be a safety awareness program. Each and every employee, each and every person that's on the premise is responsible that the workplace is safe. Then a clearly defined policy that is properly implemented. So enforcement of safety rules. And finally, or most importantly, I would say, accident investigations and records. So accidents are investigated in an unbiased and factual manner and properly recorded for making sure that such an accident never happens again. So safety is a continuing journey, not a final destination. So like we said, that there is no such thing as 100% safe, right? So it's always important that whether you are on the road, you are in the workplace, you are at your home, we always are trying to make sure that we are safe, because that's a human requirement. If you don't live, then there is nothing else, right? That's the first requirement, that you stay alive. and you stay healthy, and you stay functional. So therefore, occupational health and safety is an important concern, and everybody should be wary of that. Okay. With that said, this brings us to the 100 safety topics for the daily toolbox talk. Again, I'm not going to go into the details. I probably introduced you to these topics before, and this time, this is a task. So, this is a task that if you come next time to the class, you should have gone through these 100 topics. So where the first topic is what is a fire, and it goes to even talking about heat strokes. It talks about motion control, their grinders, scorpion stings, a sleeping giant, snake bites, near misses, static electricity, PPEs, hazards of power tools or hazards of hand tools, office safety, all the different dimensions, all different perspectives, views, 100 different safety topics that as an engineer you should be aware of. So what is a fire is not just saying, oh, what is a fire? It's also talking about the mechanics of fire, the fire triangle. It's oxygen, fuel, and heat, and that causes fire. But ignition can be electrical, chemical, thermal, or radioactive. So then, okay, the fuel can be solid, liquid, or gases. So does it mean that a solid fuel burns the same as a liquid fuel? A liquid fuel burns the same as a gaseous fuel? No, it doesn't. So the reason that you need to understand this is because once you understand this, you will understand that there are categories of fire. In American, it's class A, B, C, D, and K, while European or Australian, Australasian, so Australia and Asia, they classify class A, B, C, E, D, and F. So you can see that the classification is different. So in European and Australasian, there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 categories, while Americans categorize their fires into 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Now, why is this important to understand or categorize the fire? Because what kind of preventive or precautionary measures do you need to take? So if you know what kind of hazards, which fire hazard is existing or there is a possibility in your work environment, you need to provide the associated protective or precautionary measures. So then it talks about water is used on class A fires. What is a class A fire? So if you come back, it's an ordinary combustible material such as wood, cloth, paper. Okay. Dry chemical powder used on all classes of fires. Foam used on class A and B fires. Halon most suited for electrical fires. Carbon dioxide removes, displaces oxygen suitable for class A, B, C fire. So you can see that we learned that being a fire extinguisher does not mean that it will put out any type of fire. You need to know your fire extinguishers. How do you know your fire extinguishers? So if you look at them, here, a water-based fire extinguisher has a red pattern drawn on it. So there are 3 blocks. Then dry chemical powder has a blue pattern on it, foam yellow, halon green, and carbon dioxide white. So again, you can see that so much information in about just fire, one hazard. That's just one hazard. But look at the diversity in that hazard and look at the difference in severity, the scale of severity that can exist for just a single hazard, fire. And we think we know fire because we cook in homes, right? So we think we know fire. Just and if you look at the categories, so that is class A fire if you are using wood, cloth, or paper. If you are burning some sort of cooking oil or fat, that is a class F fire, according to European, Australasian, and a class K fire according to American. Then how do you use fire extinguishers? How do you prevent fires? Class A fires, class B fires, C, D fires. So you can see that quite a detailed discussion just about fires and what kind of precautionary measures do you need to take to make sure that your workplace is safe from the fire hazards. So like I said, that this 100 safety topics, this is going to be your learning task. And next time, hopefully when you come into class, probably I might have prepared a pop-up quiz for you, and that might include, or that will include, if there is a pop-up quiz, so it will include all these 4 documents that we covered today. Am I clear? Hello?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Sir.
Okay. Now, one more thing, I can see that there are only 25 students or 26 students that are present. No, sorry, 31 students, right? Yeah. Total of 31 students. Yeah. And we have a strength of over almost 80, right? Ibrahim, what is the total strength of both the sections? $76, okay. So now the thing is that let's stop here. But before you go, let me just explain a couple of things, since this is the first time you guys are dealing with online classes. The video lecture or the video recording of this presentation should be made available to you. So just in case if you want to look back and see what we talked about, and please make sure that you pay attention to any posts that are created on the Google Classroom. If there is any point of discussion, then you can post on the Classroom uh, stream, but just make sure it's not a place for chit chat or for social hanging out. So it's more for professional discussion. If there is any discussion relevant to the class, that's industrial health and safety, you can post there. If I find anyone posting like just comments or joking or making non-serious comments, then I'll probably have to kick you out of the class or make sure that you lose your right to post there. Am I clear?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So, like I said, I'm going to share the link of the video recording with you. Is there any questions before we stop?
Oh, thank you, sir.
All right, thank you very much for your presence, and please let all your other colleagues know that they need to be present in the class, because if they miss any quiz or any assessment that's conducted during the class, they will not be given a second chance. And again, attendance is being taken automatically. So if somebody is not coming to the class, or if you come to the class and I'm giving a presentation and you leave midway, then that will be noted as well. So please make sure that you attend your classes and you are here during the whole duration of the lecture. All right, thank you very much. You have good rest of the day and have a blessed Ramadan. Assalamu alaikum.